Chelsea will be going through an audit process right now for the numbers for the end of June 2024. They may well have to finalise their audit. Well, they will have to finalise their audit by the 31st of December. And it's possible and probable that in the way that they didn't have final confirmation last year in respect of the hotel deal, that they won't have final confirmation in respect of the women's team and anything else that they've done. We don't know what other transactions Chelsea have done to try and meet PSR for 23-24. We know that on an operating level, they're still losing about £200 million a year, or 200 million plus. I mean, it's actually more than 200 before player transfer profits and other asset sales. But we don't know what those other asset sales might be aside from the women's team. So, don't know. We'll have to see. I mean, it's probable that they get in a situation like last year where they put out a set of accounts that are effectively subject to change if the Premier League turn down certain things.
And then at Chelsea, their owners have invested £190 million over the last few weeks into the club. What could be the reason for that?
I think it's just the business needs cash. So, it's operating at a loss. So it is utilizing cash to pay the bills, because it's just, on an operating basis, there's not enough cash coming in to pay for everything that's going out, in very simple terms. And therefore, the club has to put more cash in just so it can pay the wages and everything else. That can be done in various ways. You can do it by raising debt, if you can, or by issuing equity, which is the way that they've done it. And we know about shareholder loans and all of that controversy that's ongoing at the moment. Chelsea are a club that won't have shareholder loans because they don't have a single very wealthy owner. So therefore, it's more complicated to put in a shareholder loan because you'd have to have a shareholder loan from two different parties. You'd want to charge in it a market interest rate. Of course, we know that most people haven't charged market interest rates for shareholder loans. So they're doing it by equity. It's not a big surprise. It's exactly the same as many clubs do in terms of putting new money, fresh money into the club. They will have to keep doing it, by the way. So don't expect it to stop. I mean, in fact, if they were to do if they were to get very busy, either in the transfer market or in relation to capital projects like stadia redevelopment or training ground redevelopment, whatever that is, whatever they're planning, then that will require an influx of cash, an investment of cash, and it will come in the form of equity. It will go in at the top at Chelsea Holdings or whatever company, 22 Holdco, I can't remember which company the money comes in at, and then you'll see it within the filings. You'll see the money trickle down through the group as they move the cash into the subsidiaries that need the cash to then distribute to the operating businesses below that subsidiary. So none of it's a surprise, and it's really just to pay the bills.
Let's go over to Chelsea, another one where Manchester City's APT verdict may pose some issues. Could this pose some issues for the sale of Chelsea's women's team actually being approved?
Absolutely. This is one really big area where Chelsea may have a problem with this APT situation. It's a very complex legal situation in terms of the timing of this and when the APT decision on the Chelsea women's team will be made. It is quite complex, and it's difficult to go into it all here right now in a concise way for our listeners. But yes, it is something that will give a big problem for Chelsea. And I think that is the one area for 23-24 that they may have a problem getting past the Premier League. So yes, it's a concern. But we've yet to see the end of this APT situation. The Commission have got to go back, and the judges have got to clarify some of these points. It's a legal minefield at the moment, and it's just carrying on and on. So nobody's clear. There'll be people lobbying from every side. And so once again, the Premier League's got itself into a massive mess. And as we say, some of the bigger clubs like Chelsea are now very concerned, and they should be. But we need clarification, desperately, and we need to have a new set of these rules as soon as possible. Even though they must take time to do it correctly, we need that certainty as soon as possible and get the Premier League back out of the courts and back onto the pitch.
And if the sale of Chelsea's women's team is not improved, where does that put Chelsea in terms of PSR for this season? A massive points deduction potentially coming?
Yes, there's no doubt. If that was the case, if that's the way it goes, and we're not certain it's going to be that way, but I think it's looking as it sits right now that they've got a big issue, that would lead to a points deduction. They've got big problems just now in Chelsea. We know they've had a massive spending spree, and it was always going to come home to roost in some way. And if they thought they were being clever with selling the hotels, and now we've got the women's team, if that sort of does fall apart, then yes, it's a big problem, and perhaps they weren't so clever after all.
And it's interesting because Chelsea have just gotten it going on the pitch, but you mentioned the sale of the hotels, and now that's banning them potentially from UEFA competitions next year. This problem with the selling of the women's team and the academy, could we potentially see this all work on the football pitch, but the backfiring so bad that they can't even succeed in the ways that they want to?
Well, absolutely. This would be the sort of the irony of the whole situation, that just as you're about to get things moving, other areas come in and give you a problem. So it was always a risky strategy, from Todd Bowley and Clearlake to come in here and take this on. They felt they were smart enough. They were the classic private equity guys who got brains bigger than the planet, who would come in and show the Premier League they knew more. At the moment, they're walking a tightrope. So let's just see. If they pull it off, hey, maybe they were that clever after all. But if they don't, then I'm afraid it will come crashing down in quite a big degree.
And Companies House submission revealed that Chelsea's owners have invested another £190 million into the club. What could that be for?
It's pretty clear to me. I think from my own calculations, I think City owe roughly about 530 million in transfer fees going forward. That's a big number. And I think that there's about 270 million due in the next year. So that's, again, massive numbers. And this sort of shows you the sort of spending spree we've been talking about. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that 190 million is going towards paying down these transfer fees. That's what it's got to be. So that's where I think the money's going to go. It's a cash flow issue as much as anything else, being able to pay those bills. Luckily, they've got the deep pockets to do it. But nevertheless, those are big numbers we're talking about. If you've got over £500 million out there in terms of future transfer fees to pay, that's a big number. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before.